When, on the 5th of July, 2024, the UK government changed from Conservative to Labour, I barely took any notice. I had never been interested in politics, and that wasn't going to change anytime soon, or so I assumed. Then, just before midday on the 29th of July, 3 young girls were brutally murdered at a Taylor Swift-themed dance yoga event in Southport. 10 others were seriously injured, 8 of whom were children. The deceased girls were aged just 6, 7, and 9. I, along with thousands across the world, was shocked and horrified by this terrible news. A large proportion of Britons were not only horrified, they were furious. For decades, the British people had been concerned about the high level of immigration into their country and even more concerned about levels of illegal immigration. Most rational Britons accepted we had a responsibility to take our fair share of asylum seekers, but nonetheless had concerns over the impact such a relentless influx of people might have on our relatively small country. Many, like myself, were puzzled and wondered why, having reached the safety of France, so many asylum seekers decided illegally to make the dangerous journey across the English Channel to British shores. I often remarked, in jest, that surely the French can't be that disagreeable. I also struggle to understand why these desperate asylum seekers travel through several safe countries instead of seeking refuge in the first one they reach. I am no expert in human migration, and I feel it is nonsensical to suspect that many people illegally entered Britain, not in a desperate bid to flee torture and persecution, but in the hope of bettering their prospects. This is, of course, understandable. The trouble is, a person who is willing to commit one illegal act is demonstrably disrespectful of the law. One must wonder how far that person's willingness to break laws might go. Furthermore, illegal immigrants have been known to discard all identifying documents en route, so the British authorities have little hope of examining their backgrounds for vetting. To compound matters, migrants to the UK are routinely given free accommodation, a weekly allowance, and many other privileges, perks that many Britons can only dream of receiving for free. The fear of unvetted, and potentially dangerous, people from unknown backgrounds and substantially different cultures from our own, along with the suspicion that many asylum seekers, in reality, seek to exploit the UK's generous immigration policies naturally breeds resentment within a population that has, for decades, been promised lower immigration figures by successive governments only to have those promises broken. This collective sense of resentment, which had been festering for decades within the British population, finally boiled over when news broke of 3 innocent girls being murdered in Southport. This kind of seemingly random slaughter of children was rare in the UK. Naturally, the average Briton found herself reeling, the mind searching for possible explanations. Many must have quickly brought to mind the atrocious Islamic terrorist attack that had killed many children at an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. Was this Southport attack yet another terrorist attack committed by an illegal immigrant? The question must have flashed through many minds in a tragic moment of collective consciousness. There seemed to be an information blackout, presumably implemented by the government. Shocked members of the public sought to fill the vacuum by posting speculation online. The situation quickly escalated, with people venting their anger inappropriately via social media. Before long, the streets were being flooded with angry protesters. Inevitably, a few opportunistic thugs joined the throngs, using the largely peaceful protests to cover their violent acts. Perhaps they also fed off the angry mood. These violent interlopers offered the authorities the perfect excuse to classify the unrest as a rash of riots. On the 4th of August, Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressed the nation, condemning the protests, promising that those involved would feel the full force of the law, and stating that individuals would be held on remand and convictions would follow. It was almost as if he knew these things despite court proceedings not yet having begun. Instead of acknowledging the deep grievances in which the protests were rooted, as he had done when riots broke out in the US following the murder of George Floyd, Starmer merely labeled the protesters as far-right. This blatantly showed a lack of empathy. Starmer's total refusal to acknowledge the protesters' legitimate concerns and anger only served to escalate tensions. As Starmer repeatedly branded UK citizens far-right and berated them for spreading misinformation, he already knew their instincts had been correct even if the finer details were less accurate. Items synonymous with Islamic terrorism had already been found at the alleged Southport killer's home address. Just as Starmer had predicted, or, I believe, ordered, many were convicted and substantive prison sentences were handed down with incredible speed. It is my belief this exceptional swiftness was designed to confuse and disorientate the accused. I also believe suspects were, at Starmer's request, threatened with long periods on remand and thereby pressured into pleading guilty. Many of those who bowed to the pressure to plead guilty found themselves starting long prison sentences within 2 or 3 days. Starmer's plan had worked. He had shown himself to be a tough guy, made an example of those who dared robustly to express their concerns, and set the tone for his future as an authoritarian wannabe dictator. Only then, as I watched the unfolding news broadcasts, my eyes like saucers. Only then did I start to take an interest in politics for the first time in my life. I was seeing my fellow countrymen dropping like flies, being sent down, many of them for unwise social media posts. The scent of injustice was cloying. In that moment, I realized we were now ruled by a self-serving psychopathic control freak who was drunk on power and dangerous. He sought to silence dissenting voices at all costs. The authorities targeted both online and real-world offenses with extraordinary zeal. Here are a few examples. Online offenses. Richard Williams, 34, convicted for sending menacing messages via a public communication network. Tyler K., 26, jailed for 38 months for stirring up racial hatred online, including encouraging arson attacks on hotels housing asylum seekers. Jordan Parler, 28, sentenced to 20 months for inciting racial hatred via threatening posts urging attacks. Billy Thompson, 31, jailed for 12 weeks for posting racially aggravated and offensive content. Julie Sweeney, 53, sentenced to 15 months for sending a threatening Facebook message suggesting violence against mosques. Jackie Miller, 57, jailed for 8 months after a racially aggravated diatribe against police, captured and shared online. Christopher Rogers, 38, imprisoned for 2 years for filming and sharing riot footage on Snapchat. Cameron Bell, 23, jailed for 9 months after streaming unrest live on TikTok. James Gettings, 35, received an 8-month sentence for religiously aggravated harassment, with video evidence of him mocking Muslims while circulating online. Real-world offenses. Kenzie Ruffley, 18, 2 years and 4 months for rocking a police van with an officer inside. Philip Hoban, 48, 8 months for racially abusing pro-Palestinian demonstrators in Leeds. Kane Hicks, 22, 2 years and 8 months for abusive conduct and pushing police shields. Curtis Coulson, 30, 4.5 months for brandishing a stick at anti-racist demonstrators. Stuart Bolton, 38, 2 years and 8 months for racist abuse and aggressive behavior towards officers. Mark Bowen, 40, sentenced to 25 months for verbally abusing police. Michael Whitehead, 27, 2 years and 8 months for chanting aggressive slogans at police. Andrew Ball, 49, 32 months for pouring a drink over officers. Bradley McCarthy, 34, 20 months for verbally abusing police dogs and racist slurs. Michael Campbell, 56, 20 months for fending off police dogs with a bicycle. John Can, 51, 3 years for aggressively waving his prosthetic leg at opposing protesters before letting off a firework and falling off his mobility aid. Peter Lynch, 61, 2 years and 8 months for aggressively shouting at police and carrying a provocative placard. Lynch later died in prison, having apparently taken his own life. Whilst accepting that many of the sentences handed down were appropriate, I felt, and still feel, that some were excessively harsh. Some of the convictions seemed totally unjustified and served to highlight Starmer's desire to stamp out all dissent. The government, backed by a zealous judiciary, moved with frightening speed. As Stephen Parkinson, the Director of Public Prosecutions, bluntly put it, "We do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media to look for this material and then follow up with arrests." Even sharing footage of the riots was deemed criminal. Innocent Britons who had never dreamed of tangling with the law suddenly found themselves criminalized and imprisoned. To me, it smacked of authoritarian overreach. The abuse of power, the injustice, the dismissal of deeply felt concerns, and the affront to the right to free speech. To me, these things were like a red rag to a bull. I decided, as a passionate British patriot, I had a duty to speak out and make my contribution, albeit a modest one, to the movement to save the UK. A former Royal Marine was one of the few suspects not to bow to the immense pressure to plead guilty. Jamie Michael was cleared of stirring up racial hatred after posting a Facebook video about the risks posed to the UK by unchecked illegal immigration. His case begs the question, how many others might have been found not guilty if they not be coerced into entering a guilty plea? This game represents that contribution. I will be branded, unjustifiably so, racist, far-right, Islamophobic, and bigoted. I do not care because I know I am none of these things. Such terms have become so weaponized and overused that they have become almost meaningless. They are used to silence, shame, and cow. But I refuse to be silenced. Starmer can his stormtroopers in the early hours of morning to knock on my door with their big green key. If they fail to pin anything on me, I know a night in a police cell will be ordered. For sometimes the process itself is the punishment. I served 7 years in HMP Trellers, so I feel prepared. Honestly, the risk of decapitation seems more pressing. I deplore violence, abuse, and racism. I support the rights of all to practice their religions. However, I am not prepared to give up the culture, traditions, values, and moral standards that form the foundations of Britain. I am proud to call myself a white British man. I am proud of Britain's Christian heritage, freedoms, and tolerant nature. For too long, our tolerance has been abused, albeit by a small minority of those coming from other cultures. Pandering to minority groups at the expense of the native population is an increasingly unpopular trait of the British government and many European governments. Rightly so, in my opinion. As Sir Keir Starmer himself once said, if you don't like the changes that we've made, I say the door is open and you can leave. Please do enjoy the game. Julian Henley.
The heart of London town, a villain tried to bring us down.
You criticise the previous government for failing to compensate us. You promised to help us. So, where's our compensation, you two-faced
I love you. I love you.
Fucking waspy women.
Truth bomb here.
Fuck right off. I only said that to get...
Here comes the truth bomb here. 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 Here comes the truth bomb here.
You criticise the previous government for failing to compensate us. You promised to help us. So, where's our compensation, you two-faced liar?
You fucking waspy women. You old bitches. You can fuck right off. I only said that to get elected.
Hey, look. Here's that goddamn moron, Starmer. Randy Harmer. Starmer? Farmer Harmer. What a fucking loser. Stupid, idiotic asshole. Thanks, Starmer. Your daddy sure was a toolmaker. You sure got that right. Shut up, Nigel. You're not funny.
Do you know, Labour's anti-corruption minister, Julian, she was forced to resign recently, don't you know?
Oh, really? And let me guess the reason. Was she under investigation over allegations of corruption by any chance, do you think?
Well, no, actually. You see, the thing is, to be fair...
Just 1 minute. Did you say her name is Tulip? What kind of crazy name is that? Tulip, England's Minister for Anti-Corruption. Tulip, England's Minister for Anti-Corruption. Tulip.
Far right thug.
Big up, Keir Starmer.
Here comes the truth bomb here. 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 Here comes the truth bomb here.
In other news, Sir Keir Starmer has announced a complete ban on the sale of the Christian Bible, stating the book might cause racial tensions. The Prime Minister also unveiled new measures
Labour's
to stop the
anti-corruption
sale of
minister,
repelling
Julian,
papers.
she was forced to
In
resign
an interview
recently.
with
Don't
Sky
you know?
News, he explained that
Really?
the
And
far-right
let me guess
thugs
the reason.
use
Is
their
there
social
no investigation
and
into
allegations to
allegations of
write
corruption?
into words.
By any chance, do you think?
Well, no,
What a lovely
actually,
day. Shame Keir
you see, the
Starmer's
thing
spoiling
is,
for the
to be
national
fair,
One minute. You just say her name is Tulip. What kind of crazy name is that? Tulip, England's Minister for Anti-Corruption. Tulip, England's Minister for Anti-Corruption. Tulip.
Here comes the truth bomb here.
Far right thug.
Big up, Keir Starmer.
Here comes the truth bomb here. Here comes the truth bomb here.